The first time the machine screamed, everyone thought he was dying. The heart monitor spiked wildly, the ventilator hissed, and the still body of billionaire industrialist Alaric Voss trembled beneath the white hospital sheets. For 9 months, he had not moved a finger. For 9 months, he had been nothing more than a name on the hospital's VIP wing and a fortune trapped inside a silent body. And the only person in the room when it happened was a young nurse named Mirela Dain, her hands still wet from the basin of warm water she had used to bathe him. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of compassion, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Stories like this deserve to be heard. Mirela had grown up in a small town where the river flooded every spring and money was always scarce. Her father had been a mechanic with oil-stained hands, her mother a seamstress who worked until her eyes burned in the dim yellow light. When her father fell ill, it was a nurse who had stayed past her shift, brushing his hair back and speaking to him like he still mattered. Mirela never forgot that tenderness. It was why she chose nursing, not for prestige, not for wealth, but because she believed even the silent deserved dignity. Working in the private wing of Halden Crest Medical Center was not glamorous. Yes, the sheets were softer and the floors quieter, but illness stripped everyone of status. Alaric Voss, once a titan who built skyscrapers and tech empires, now lay motionless, his body sustained by tubes and rhythms of electricity. Rumor said he had collapsed during a board meeting in broad daylight, struck by a rare neurological event that locked him inside himself. His family visited at first, lawyers, cousins, distant relatives with polished shoes and colder eyes, but as months passed, their appearances dwindled. The room grew quieter. Only Mirela remained constant. Every morning, sunlight streamed through the tall windows, painting warm squares across the floor and over Alaric's still face. Mirela would open the blinds deliberately. "You should see the day," she would whisper softly, though he never answered. She bathed him with careful hands, speaking about ordinary things, the bakery downstairs that burned its croissants again, the pigeons fighting over crumbs, the way the city park smelled after rain. She massaged lotion into his stiff hands and trimmed his nails as if he were preparing for an important meeting. Other staff sometimes teased her gently, saying he couldn't hear. But Mirela believed that somewhere inside that unmoving shell, a man might still be listening. Her own life outside the hospital was heavy. Her mother's medical bills piled up on the kitchen table. Mirela took extra shifts, her back aching by the end of the week. She skipped meals to save money and wore the same worn sneakers until the soles thinned. Some nights, exhaustion pressed against her ribs so tightly she could barely breathe. Yet each morning, she returned to room 1107, determined that if Alaric Voss could not fight for himself, she would fight for his comfort. There were days she doubted herself. When the doctors discussed prognosis in low, clinical voices, using phrases like minimal response and persistent vegetative state, it felt like they were closing a door. But Mirela kept talking to him. She told him about her father's stubbornness, about how he used to say that engine sometimes just needed patience and steady hands. She would place a cool cloth on Alaric's forehead and imagine that beneath his closed eyes, he was traveling through memories, trying to find his way back. Then came that morning. It was bright, the kind of day where the sky was impossibly blue. Mirela had filled the basin with warm water scented faintly with lavender. She hummed under her breath as she washed his arms, careful around the 4 lines. Sunlight touched his face, and for a fleeting second, she thought she saw a flicker beneath his eyelids. She leaned closer, her heart stumbling. "Good morning, Mr. Voss," she said gently. "It's a beautiful day." The monitor shrieked. His fingers twitched first, a small, trembling movement against the sheet. Then his chest rose sharply, not in the mechanical rhythm of the ventilator but in a deep, startled breath. His eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes that were confused, glassy, but unmistakably awake. Mirela froze, the damp cloth slipping from her hand. For a heartbeat, she thought she was imagining it. But then his gaze shifted, unfocused yet searching, until it landed on her face. In that suspended moment, the world narrowed to the space between them. 9 months of silence cracked open. She called for the doctors, her voice shaking, but she did not step away. His hand, weak and trembling, moved slightly toward hers. She clasped it instinctively. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, "You're back. You're back." The recovery was slow and uncertain. Alaric could not speak at first. His muscles had wasted, his voice was little more than air. But his eyes followed Mirela whenever she entered the room. When specialists tested his responses, they were astonished at the cognitive awareness he demonstrated. It was as if he had been trapped behind glass, watching, waiting. Weeks later, when he could finally form words, they came in a raspy whisper. He told them he remembered darkness, distant sounds like echoes underwater. He remembered a voice describing sunlight and pigeons and burnt croissants. He remembered someone telling him about a mechanic father and a river that flooded in spring. That voice, he said, had been a rope in the dark. He had followed it back. The media swarmed when news broke that the reclusive billionaire had awakened. Headlines called it a miracle of modern medicine. Experts debated neurological anomalies. But in quiet moments, Alaric would ask for Mirela. He would study her face as though memorizing it, gratitude softening the sharp angles of his once commanding features. What no one expected was what happened next. After months of rehabilitation, Alaric held a press conference, standing unsteadily but determined in the hospital's sunlit atrium. Cameras flashed. Investors speculated about his return to power. Instead, he spoke about vulnerability, about lying helpless while the world moved on without him. He spoke about the young nurse who treated him like a human being when he was little more than a body in a bed. Then he announced the creation of the Dain Foundation, named after Mirela's family, dedicated to funding long-term care patients who had been abandoned or forgotten. Millions were pledged to hospitals across the country to ensure that no patient would lack consistent, compassionate care. Mirela stood at the back, overwhelmed, her hands trembling the same way his once had. She had never sought recognition. She had only done what she believed was right. Yet her simple acts of kindness had rippled outward, changing not just one life, but countless others. Alaric privately ensured her mother received the best treatment available, covering every bill without fanfare. He offered Mirela opportunities, education grants, leadership roles, but she chose to remain at the bedside, where healing began. She understood now more than ever that miracles were rarely loud. They grew quietly in ordinary moments, in warm basins of water and open blinds welcoming the day. If this story has touched your heart, if you believe that even the smallest kindness can echo through someone's darkest hours, please like, share, and comment below. Your support helps stories like this reach others who need hope. And before we end, comment the word miracle if you believe compassion can change destinies. On a bright morning nearly a year after he first opened his eyes, Alaric walked slowly through the hospital garden. Mirela walked beside him, not as a hero and a billionaire, but as two people who had witnessed each other at their most fragile. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, warm and forgiving. Around them, life continued in its ordinary rhythm. And in that gentle daylight, it was clear that the true miracle had not been wealth restored or headlines written. It had been a young nurse who chose, every single day, to treat a silent man as if he could hear, and a man who, against all odds, did.